I'll take the applause even though I know it's just in anticipation of about what is about to happen. That's okay with me. I've been asked to let you know that in the case of an emergency, the exits are there, and along the sides. Please remove yourselves calmly if you have the need to do so. Thank you. My name is Dr. Andrea Maas. I am Assistant Professor of Music Education here at the Crane School of Music. I first met François Clemmons about 20 years ago when I was performing in a production of Chicago in Middlebury, Vermont. As I was introduced to him and realized who this smiling, gentle man in front of me was, I was completely overcome, threw myself onto him, and immediately began sobbing. He was very generous and chuckled and said, "This happens all the time, honey, don't worry about it." At least that's how I remember it, so that's how I will continue to tell the story. All at once and without warning, I was overwhelmed with nostalgia and love. And only in that moment, I realized what a profound impact this person had had on me and my life and who I was in the process of becoming as a young music educator. For the next 15 years, I had the great fortune of observing and admiring his work as a colleague and as a co-conspirator in the work that we do as music teachers, caring for students through meaningful musical experiences. Fast forward a bit. As the Joy Anthony Douglas Committee contemplated guests who could speak to the many important topics we as music teacher educators and pre-service music teachers were discussing, we realized that Dr. Clemmons was, in fact, the embodiment of yes, peace, and love, and represented many of the intersections that we felt were critical to acknowledge and address as we navigated who we might be and what our roles might be as we re-entered the world of teaching in person. We believe that Dr. Clemmons, through his telling of his own stories and in making music with us, is a living example of the principles that have long been fostered by this generous endowment. So now I'll tell you about Dr. Clemmons. Dr. François Clemmons is an American singer, actor, playwright, and university lecturer. He famously played Officer Clemmons, the friendly neighborhood policeman on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and his recently published memoir intimately details his life story as an artist with rural roots. When he earned the role as Officer Clemmons on the award-winning television series Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Clemmons made history as the first African-American actor to have a recurring role on a children's program. A new, wide world opened for Clemmons, but one that also required him to make painful personal choices and sacrifices. From New York to Russia, Berlin to California, Clemmons has performed for audiences around the world and remains a beloved figure. Clemmons has lived an historical and enlightening life and a career of a man who has brought joy to millions of adults and children across generations and borders. His book, Officer Clemmons, a memoir, details the incredible life story of François Clemmons, beginning with his early years in Alabama and Ohio, marked by family trauma and loss, through his studies as a music major at Oberlin College, where Clemmons began to investigate and embrace his homosexuality, to a chance encounter with Fred Rogers that changed the whole course of both men's lives, leading to a deep spiritual friendship and mentorship spanning nearly 40 years. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. François Clemmons.
You guys are sincere. That's what you get up here in the North Country. Sincerity. I'm so excited to be here. And Andrea, she explained to you, I've known her for a very long time. She took so long to give the introduction, I sat down again. And I started writing her out a check. I need to say thank you. Thank you, my dear. She was wonderful in that production of Chicago, by the way. And I mean, all the dancing and the hooting and carrying on, I think she was one of the ones in jail. Yeah, raising hell in jail. So, I almost always bring something like this along, and people say, what do you have in there? I can't always tell them, but I can tell you. Because this is a wonderful songbook called Songs of Zion, where I get an awful lot of my American Negro spirituals and the difference between hymns, spirituals, and gospel music. And there are some serious differences, important differences. And I won't go into all the details right away, but spirituals are the music of slaves that we sang down on the plantation, generally in the South. But I don't know if you know the history of New York. New York State was one of the largest slave states in the Union, and Sojourner Truth talks about it in her biography, what it was like living up north. We always have this idea of what it was like on the plantation in the South. Well, there's a whole lot of farmland up in north here, and a whole lot of black folks were working the soil as slaves. So New York State started out as a slave state. The other thing is I couldn't figure out, I thought you might want to know. Officer Clemmons, it's a memoir. Child, it took me 26 years to write that thing. I have a book of poetry. I have some arrangements of spirituals that I put together that was published in Germany by Strube Verlag is the name, how you say it. That's his company. Mr. Friedrich Strube owned this company, Verlag. And they liked my spirituals, and they published those. And then I had some poetry. Did I mention poetry already? I did a volume of poetry. And then I started writing we have a writing program up in Breadloaf, Middlebury, Vermont, up in the mountains. Wonderful place to go as long as you don't get cold at night. They finally put heat in the buildings up there. But anyway, I was taking a course in memoir. And so I began to write, organized my life story. I had been writing it since like 1972 or 73, when I began to tour around America, first of all doing Porgy and Bess with the Cleveland Orchestra in the part of Sporting Life. And it was what you call a bread and butter role. And you have to be able to pull certain roles or, they would be oratorios. Handel's Messiah, the St. Matthew Passion by Bach, St. Luke, and who's the other saint? 2 or 3 of them, St. Matthew, St. John. Anyway, I learned all of those, and all of that good music I was learning, and they were saying, can you sing us a spiritual? I said, well, I've learned to sing in German. I can sing in French. I do Mozart. They said, well, we know that. I decided to go head on and sing because, oh yeah, if you miss me from singing down here, and you can't find me nowhere, come on up to bright glory. I'll be singing up there. I'll be singing up there. Oh, Lord, I'll be singing up there. Oh, come on up to bright glory. I'll be singing up there. Now, if you miss me from writing down here, and you can't find me nowhere, come on up to bright glory. I'll be riding up there. I'll be riding up there. Yeah, I'll be riding up there, Lord. Come on up to bright glory. I'll be riding up there. Now, if you miss me from hugging down here, and you can't find me nowhere, come on up to bright glory. I'll be riding what? Sing up there. Sing it along with me. I'll be hugging up there. I'll be hugging up there. Come on up to bright glory. I'll be hugging up there. Now, I had a wonderful choir of ladies today. And those ladies were wonderful. And they were singing a song. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the big round world right in his hand. He's got the whole world, Lord. In his hand, he's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the wind and the rain, y'all, in his hand. He's got the wind and the rain right up in his hand. He's got the wind and the rain right up in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon, Lord, in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon right up in his hand. He's got the sun and the moon right up in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got you and me right up in his hand. He's got you and me right up in his hand. He's got you and me right up in his hand. He's got the whole world in his... What are those girls at? I don't hear y'all. In his hand. He's got everybody. He's got everybody. He's got everybody. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the going and the coming right up. He's got the going and the coming, y'all. He's got the going and the coming right up. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got the up and the down right up. He's got the up and the down cheering. He's got the up and the down right up. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got you and me right up. He's got you and me, Lord. He's got everybody. He's got the whole world in his hand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. those girls were singing so beautifully, and I told them, you have to remember that one of the unique gifts that black people brought to music is syncopation. So almost every time we do a song, we are syncopating the rhythm. The rhythm is a very, very important part of the music. And I didn't say anything. I didn't think it was appropriate. We do most of our singing dancing. Now, you know I'm not going to be up here dancing at my age and with these knees. But you can. You don't have to do anything jumping. There won't be any jumping tonight either. But you can move your body. The music is, if I do, wade in the water, wade in the water, chilling away in the water, God gonna trouble the water. Now, I want to just stop for a minute, because I didn't hear anything, number one, and I know you know it. Amen. And the other thing is the diction. It's very important. I say wade in the water. That's all. It's not so terribly different that you don't hear me. But don't modernize spirituals. These were earthy people who worked in the fields planting and working with the cows or the chickens, farm animals. So wade in the water, wade in the water, chilling away. Lord, the water, God gonna trouble the water. Well, now, see that band all dressed in white, God gonna trouble the water. Looks like the band of Israelites. Yeah, wade in the water, wade in the water, chilling away. Lord, the water, God gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red. Oh, it looks like the band that Moses led. Away, sing it with me. In the water, way in the water, chilling away. In the water, God gonna trouble the water. Again, the chorus. Away in the water, away in the water, chilling away. In the water, God gonna trouble the water. I said, God gonna trouble the water. God gonna trouble the water. Oh, thank you. Now you hit and feel the syncopation. And black people were working while they were singing. So what I did with you was call and response. You know call and response. So when I say wade in the water, you call. Swing low, sweet chariot. Swing low, sweet chariot. Oh, I looked over Jordan, Lord, and what did I see? Yeah, a big coming after me. Whoa, swing low, sweet child, I don't hear you coming for. Yeah, swing low, sweet chariot. Well, this is getting nice around here. We're trying to have service. All right. I love to tell the story about my family. And I give you what I consider a prequel. You know what a prequel is? Before the main story happens. I was not alive when a lot of this happened, but my mother, Sister Inez, I used to bug her and say, Mama, 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 tell me what it was like when we were down south. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, and my father and mother had a dreadful time, and they fought all the time. It was a nightmare. So my mother and father separated. And before they separated, when they separated, we went by train all the way from Tuscaloosa, Alabama to Youngstown, Ohio. It was so noisy. The train, clappity, 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 clappity. I was like a 3-4-year-old kid, and nobody bothered to explain to me that my daddy wasn't going to catch up. You understand what I'm talking about? We were on the train headed off somewhere. My mother, my brother, and I have twin sisters who one just recently passed of COVID, but nevertheless, she was with us in that group on the train. And all these giants, you know, these giants walking back and forth and making noise and looking at us. And sometimes they would say, come on, young boy, sit over here with me, sit here. My mother didn't have seats on the train, and so they helped us. What on earth do you do without the help and kindness of strangers? You absolutely never know how it's going to come back to you. So my mother would tell me about Laura May, who was a wonderful cook. She had 13, 14, 15 children. They don't know how many kids she had. There were so many brothers and sisters and cousins and second cousins and third cousins. But they all took their roots back to great-grandmama Laura May. And they lived on an old plantation down south in what they we'll call a rundown, ramshackled building. The wind would push it over. And my great-grandmother had been given permission to live there because she was the mistress for old Mr. Sanders. Now, old Mr. Sanders took to my grandmama, my great-grandmama, for almost all of her life. He was her lover. Everybody knew except the folks in the big house. Supposedly the wife didn't know. Supposedly his biological children by her didn't know, but everybody else did. And you didn't do anything to mess with Miss Laura because they all knew she might tell old Mr. Sanders, and he would get after you, lash you, whip you, brutalize you. So don't mess with her. So she walked around. She had to work just as hard. She didn't have any choice. And she knew that if she weren't old master's mistress, they couldn't stay on the Sanders plantation. Everybody knew that. Well, when old master Sanders would come along, he'd come along cloppity, cloppity on his old horse. He'd ride along, and he'd, whoa, Miss Laura May, whoa, Miss Laura May. He'd be on his horse riding. Now, you know I told you to come on. I'm coming down here to see you. Where you at? You ain't come out of that house yet? And she'd take off her apron, fix her hair. She was almost as cute as I am. And then she would flatten out her dress, and she would start walking. Well, Miss Laura May, my great-grandmother, had fallen in love with another black slave. His name was Leon Penman. He had been an ex-slave on the farm also. But she and Leon had developed a tremendously deep, loving relationship. And Leon Penman didn't like it that this white man was having sex with his beloved, whom he considered his wife. Well, when Leon Penman saw my great-grandmother Laura May walking down past the house on the old path, and she was getting ready to get to the barn, and old man Sanders caught up with her and said, I said, how'd you do there? How you doing? She said, oh, I'm just fine, always fine. She had stopped listening to him 10 years ago. She knew exactly what he was going to ask. He always asked the same thing. And then, after a while, he'd get down off his horse and told the horses, and they'd walk along slowly. Well, I think I would have come down here to see you, but everything was happening up there on the big house, you know. Everything falls on me. I got to do everything. He's talking, and she's not listening. But she becomes aware that Leon Penman is following them. Oh, shucks, with an eye. And she says, Leon, go back. Go ahead on up. And old Master Sanders, he didn't know, what was she talking about? Leon, go back. Just about that time, Leon Penman pulls out a cleaver, and he raises it up. Bang, bang, bang. Old Master Sanders shot him 3 times, point blank range. Leon Penman was dead before he hit the ground. And oh, my baby, oh, Leon, my great grandmother went over and she fell on top of him. What's wrong with you? Don't you know that Mr. Sanders carried that gun in his overalls? Everybody knew it. Why did you try to do that? Oh, Leon, what am I going to do? She lamented. And she cried, leave him alone, leave him there. I can't stand the black motherfucker myself. Never could. That's where he belongs, in the dirt. Get on away from him. Get away from him, I say. And she ignored him, and everybody else moved away. They were afraid he would shoot one of them. Even the babies got quiet. He looked at him. That motherfucker ruined my evening. He gets up on his horse. I'll see you the next time I come down here, Laura May. And he better not be here, dead or whatever. And he rides on down. And he keeps going until he's past the barn. And he's getting further away. And she's crying, oh, Leon, oh God, my baby. Oh, Lord, I love you. Yeah. Oh, Lord, have mercy. And they all begin to moan and grieve with her. Yeah, oh, Lord, Lord. As soon as old Master Sanders is gone, all the men rush in and they pick up the body, which was heavy and full of blood. And Miss Laura May, she was trying to help them and hang on, Lord, yeah. Leon. What I gonna do? No, what I gonna do, Lord? She's following along while they are carrying Leon to the old shed. And when they get inside, they put some boards and some boxes together, and they lay his body down. And Miss Laura May drops down next to him, and they start peeling his clothes that were already becoming sticky from the blood. Somebody, bring me some water in a little pan. And they go out to the pump, and they bring her some water, and she starts trying to clean his body, the body of the man whom she loved. And so she sat there with him, and they cut his clothes off. And Leon was beginning to get a little stiff lying there, so they pushed his arms in close to him. Oh, Lord, what I gonna do? Well, what I gonna do? My Leon, oh no, there's no right to kill him. Yeah, oh. And by this time, the women had put most of the children to bed, and they began to come around to try and console Miss Laura May, who had just lost the great love of her life. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And when they got him all cleaned up, put on an old pair of overalls, struggled, got him on, they began to move back and give Miss Laura May done what you told me. Lord, sure done what you told me to do. Oh, I done what you told. Yeah, I done what you told me to do, Lord. I done what you told me to do. When morning comes, they all began to gather around in the old shack. They have to figure out what to do with the body. And his peoples were on the next plantation. And the news had gone up to them to come and help bury Leon Penman. So that's the story of the prequel for Officer Clemmons. Thank you. Well, in that old ramshackle house also lived my granddaddy, Saul. And my granddaddy, Saul, is the one who taught me to sing, who encouraged me to sing. And when I got up early in the morning, I slept with my brother. He and I shared a bunk, a pallet. He was a year older than I am, and I was extremely close to my brother. And I'd get up in the morning, and I'd sneak away, and I'd say, Granddaddy, where you at? And my granddaddy said, I'm over here, boy. Come on over here. And I'd go to my granddaddy, say, can we go out today and listen to the cane talk to us? He said, well, I guess so, but you better be quiet. Your great-grandmama don't like for us to talk about the cane. There was a cane that my grandfather used. He had rheumatiz. And so while he was walking with the cane, he told me to be quiet now. The cane will begin to talk and tell you stories of Afrique, a country, a land where we were kings and queens, and we were not slaves. We were not always slaves, boy. So don't you let nobody tell you that you're just an old slave. Now you listen, be quiet, and the cane start talking. Rockamamumba teloro. And I used to listen. I said, oh, Granddad, I can sing that. He said, you can, boy? Yeah, I can sing. Let me hear you. Oh, no, hi, Granddaddy. Is that what he's singing, Granddaddy? I can sing that. My granddaddy said, okay, let's see what else the cane is singing. No, Rockamamumba kumbo beyond Lily tombe. Rockamamumba kumbo beyond Lily tombe. Rocka, Mateo, Hayo, Mateo, Raka, Raka, Mumba, Telaka Facho, So, boy, you got a pretty voice for a boy. You're going to be a singer. You're going to sing the songs of your people, no matter where you go. So, I went with my granddaddy, and I listened to the cane, and the cane told me stories of a jungle in a far-off land, and it was ruled by a king lion. And in this jungle, over a piece from the jungle was a marshland where a boy named Adeyemi Shofola. Adeyemi Shofola? Yes, Adeyemi Shofola. And he became the ruler of his people. That's who you came from, boy. You didn't come from no slaves. Oh, I see. I was a king too. Yeah, I can. Well, yes, of course you're a king. You come from kings, you'll always be a king to me. And so my granddaddy, Will Tasal, taught me how to sing. And they had a storm come up suddenly. Everybody said, this is the worst one. We've never had a storm quite this bad, Will. And so everybody began to prepare for this terrible storm that was coming. And they propped up the old sagging house. Well, nothing they could do could save that structure. And so everybody had to gather as much of their belongings as they could and head down the road. They didn't know where they were going. They had never been away from the plantation their whole lives. But they knew that the water was coming up, and they had to go somewhere. And as they headed down the road, they were joined by many other people searching, wondering, what's going to come? What's next? They didn't know north from south, from east, from west. Many of them did not. All they knew is they couldn't stay in that house no more. And they knew that the rain was getting heavier and heavier. And there were snakes and even alligators. And the mothers and daddies had to protect the children from all of the wild beasts that were running away from the water also for protection. In the midst of that terrible, terrible storm, my great-granddaddy got losted. And they sent several of my bigger cousins back to find him. And they never saw him again. But somebody found his cane. They knew that cane. And when he brought it to my great-grandmother, I grabbed for it. And she said, "What are you doing with that cane, boy?" "Grandma, this is the cane that was singing to me and Daddy." "Yes, I don't know. Where is he? Where's my granddaddy? Where's my granddaddy?" "Oh, poor boy." "Yeah, all right, you can keep the cane for a while, but you mustn't grieve so much. You're too young." These things happen, and we may still find him sometime. He might come along in someone else's wagon. But we never saw my granddaddy again. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows my sorrows. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Oh, yes, Lord. Now sometimes I'm up, yeah, sometimes I'm down. Oh, yes, Lord. Sometimes, oh Lord, I'm to the ground. Oh, yes, oh Lord. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows my sorrows. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Glory, hallelujah. Now you see me down here, just a going on so. I got my troubles down here below. Oh, yes, Lord. Nobody knows of the trouble I see. No, nobody. Oh, yes, Lord. No, hey, nobody knows the trouble I see. Oh, Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that motivates you to go out and buy the book and read the real thing. Now, I live in Middlebury, Vermont, and a whole lot of folks in Vermonters, they're New Englanders. Do I seem like I'm a New Englander? I don't expect so. But I belong over there. Some of the best friends in the whole world are my buddies in Vermont. I lived for 35 years, by the way, in Manhattan. So I know how to get around New York. I throw a New York on them from time to time when you have to. But some of my friends I just want to acknowledge are here with me tonight. And up front here is Frances Stone and her beloved husband, Paul Stone. And I'm so grateful because the three of us have traveled all over America. We've been down to Washington, D.C., to the African American Slave Museum, part of the Smithsonian Institute. We've been down to Nashville. We went to Fisk University. We went to Sewanee, obviously. And then we went on down to Montgomery, to the Hanging Institute. I'm stopping because in the midst of being in that has anybody here been down to Montgomery to the Hanging Museum? May I urge you to go. It's a powerful human experience. And they have hanging all through this museum cups that look like they could be nooses of all the people who were lynched over the years. The incredible, shocking thing is how somber and how quiet. And I think Francis will tell you that. It's a sad, sad place. You don't necessarily want to go there, but there's a human experience. So we were walking in the Hanging Museum when a boy, complete stranger, walks up to me and says, "I know who you are." "What do you mean you know who I am?" "I know who you are, and I'm very happy you're here. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for an..." Is that a song to sing it like in this? "Will you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day." It was not a beautiful day. "And since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?" Everybody in the museum was singing with us. There's ask Paul and Francis. They were just singing. It was like a warm quilt going throughout that whole museum. At first I thought it was sacrosanct, something cruel and unsophisticated, terrible. And it turned into such a deep dirge. And they wouldn't leave me alone. They said, "We know about Mr. Rogers. We love Mr. Rogers." And we think, oh, what I forgot to tell you is everybody in there was black. Everybody except Francis and Paul, maybe. One or two others, sometimes they're black. There was a couple of people, they were all white. I mean, black. They were, and they knew the words, and they said, "We watched Mr. Rogers when we were young. We loved Mr. Rogers. We're so happy you're here. What can we do for you? Can we do anything?" No. But I thought, there are many ways to say I love you. There are many ways to say I care about you. Many ways, many ways, many ways to say I love you. There's the singing way to say I love you. There's the singing something special someone would like to hear. The singing way, the singing way, the singing way to say I love you. Cleaning up your clothes can say I love you. And moving all your toys before you're asked to do it. Writing special stories for the holidays and making plays. You'll find many ways to say I love you. You'll find many ways to say I care about you. Many ways, many ways, many ways to say I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I've spoken to Andrea. Is that her with the little baby back there? The baby went to sleep. Well, maybe Niels can come. And there's supposed to be some Q&A. Do you have one question or two questions you might want to ask the Diva Man? Don't be shy. You get $100 for each question. What was Mr. Rogers like? Number one, you need to read the book. There's a lot of good stuff in there about Mr. Rogers. And the thing I probably get this thing started, he was the kindest, one of the kindest men, kindest people I've ever met. He is as kind in real life as he was on television. He was patient. He was loving. He was my mentor, like a patron of the arts. And what I learned from him was immeasurable. I can't tell you all of it in one evening. How it's as though I was going on my journey in life and he saw me over there and he said, "Come here, I want to talk to you. I want to tell you something. I have something to tell you." And what he had to tell me was about unconditional love. I had grown up in a home where there was a lot of violence, as I spoke to you earlier. So to meet this white man who expressed such genuine interest in me, I was suspicious. And I was not ready to believe him right away. And I thought, what does he want? Well, we'll see. And I began to do little things to test him. And he came through with flying colors because of the endurance and the patience and the time. And one day we were in the studio and he says, I had come down from New York City to Pittsburgh because I didn't have any work. And he said, come on over to the station and be with me. So I did. I was standing in the wings and he said, I like you just the way you are. You know, you make every day a special day, and you know how? Just by your being you, and I love you the way you are. And he was looking right in my eyes. I was, so, what? Who? And so he was singing the Tomorrow song, and he went off the stage, and Johnny Costa played this absolutely fantastic roulade of all kinds of beautiful musics. And finally, Nikki, who was the floor manager, says, cut! And I was walking around what you would call stage left, and Fred was coming around stage right, and I was still incredulous is the word. I said, Fred, were you talking to me? And he looked me deep in my eyes and said, yes, I've been talking to you for 2 years, but you heard me today. That's what Mr. Rogers is like.
Hi there, I'm in the back.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I guess I'll stand. I just first wanted to say thank you. I'm such a big fan of yours, and it means so much that you're here with us.
Thank
I
you.
wanted to know what your advice was for music educators, specifically white music educators who want to teach spirituals in a music education setting with their classrooms and with their choirs, and what your advice is to do it authentically.
Well, that's the first thing I was going to say. Do them authentically. Don't try to white them up by fixing the language and making them sound like a Mozart text. These are earthy people who did not have degrees, and they sang from their hearts. They were deep songs, and there was mourning and pain. So what I generally tell white people, or even Latin people, anyone, Asian, I've conducted Asian choirs, Italian choirs, German choirs. Empathy. Empathy. You need to feel what black people felt. You're not above it. You know, you're up here and the slaves were down there. I'd say to them, if I'm going to sing Italian music, opera, whatever, I have to learn the customs, the behavior, what they wore, how they did their hair, the snuff they would, you know, there's a certain way that makes you Italian. And then when you sing, they say, oh my goodness, if I close my eyes, I say you are a white Italian. I say, honey, there's some black Italians. I know they are because they came from Ethiopia. Italians invaded Ethiopia. There's so many black people rolling up and down the hills of Rome. Anyway, you haven't been over there and you haven't seen them, but I did. So if you're going to do French music, you have to learn the music of the salon, which was tight. You know, they wore those stockings and the pants down to there, and they wore those wigs that stood up this high. And they, too, they had their embroidered handkerchiefs, and they dipped snuff, too. Bonjour, comment ça va? Ça va bien. Well, those were the guys who sang and wrote the French repertoire. Well, you have to get down there with the black people if you're going to sing our music, the same approach. But because of the haughtiness of white people, they often feel they cannot do it. It's humbling to sing this great music because it requires that you be absolutely honest. So I don't care who you are. Even some black people try to show me that they have doctorate degrees and what have you and fix up the language. And the first thing I tell them is I can't stand the language. Who are you trying to impress? You cannot impress Reverend Dr. Clemmons So let's go back to the beginning and sing the way in the water, way in the water, children, away in the water, God are gonna trouble the water. Now the other thing is, that in addition to that rhythm, that syncopation that I think is so important, there's also a deep, deep, deep bruised soul that needs healing. It needs comforting. It needs love and understanding. So when you sing the songs, they're not light songs, little ditties that you might want to sing. I remember, anyway, the tempo was in the fields. The white slave owner did not want his property to work fast. So the pace is always at a working pace. Call and response. Whatever you're doing. I've been gone down the fountain. I'm just from the fountain, Lord. I just come from the fountain. His name so sweet. Zidon Elder, do you love Jesus? Yes, yes, I do love my Jesus. Elder, do you love Jesus? His name so sweet. Oh Lord, I just come from the fountain. I'm just from the fountain, Lord. I just come from the mountain. His name, ooh, so sweet. He knows my heart. I'm sorry, who did ask that question a long time ago? What was that? Oh, all right, girl. I'm happy. Thank you. You got $100 coming. Just talk to Andrea and them. Was there another question? Now listen. If you don't ask me a question, I'm gonna talk all night. That's lots of stuff I can tell you about. Not all of it is meant to. Yes, there's a young man here.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to meet you. I wanted to ask about your experience with the college environment. I know you went to Oberlin, which is known as a very open-minded and progressive and accepting school. I'm not sure if it was always that way, but what was your experience when you went to college? Did you feel like all parts of your identity were accepted? Was it a place that sort of went the extra mile to make sure that you had a place where you fit in and felt like you belonged?
Well, I got a lot of that. It was a challenge for me. Quite frankly, I was trying to come out as a gay person. And everybody all around me was saying, no, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. And so it was a stifling experience sometimes to see all my buddies dating and experimenting, and I was generally alone. So that's the first thing. And the church, I don't have a close affiliation with the Baptist church to this day because of their negative attitudes for a gay man. My basic feeling is it's none of their effing business what I do. But I realize that our society has certain, amen. But the other part of that was they were trying to say, you're going to have a rough time in the culture, in the society, unless you consider settling down, getting married to a woman, a regular woman, and maybe having children and that sort of thing. And I did get married, and it was an absolute disaster. And after that, I realized that just because somebody was older than I am did not mean they were wiser. Those wise guys, and I said this to a couple of them, you have never loved a man the way I have. So you don't know what I'm talking about. So don't tell me what it means to be gay. I wrote the book for young gay people to realize that in our society, we can have challenges, but we can also be sitting up here on the stage as Reverend Dr. Clemmons or whatever you want to do or need to do. And, you know, a lot of people thought Fred Rogers was was homophobic, and he wasn't. He just knew that on the program, if there was an openly gay person in that time, Procter & Gamble, Heinz & Heinz, Johnson & Johnson, Heinz Ketchup, I mean, you know what I mean. They would not continue their support, and that was his baby, that program. And he didn't want it to be threatened. He made it very clear to me that he loved me, and he will always love me. But I could not be open on the program. Unfortunately, it also meant that if I went somewhere, somebody would say, oh, we know who this is. Aren't you Officer Clemmons? Aren't you the guy from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood? And I didn't want my picture in certain journals with conversation and dialogue. That part was not so good. In fact, that's why I started writing. I spent too much time alone. I'm an extrovert. There are many introverts who are very happy, but I like it being out there in the world and exchanging with people. And there were many, many situations when it was wise for me to go home alone. And I did. So there were lots of other things that I learned and benefited from. A kind of serious research and understanding of early childhood development. He's the one who made me interested in what I was going through when I was 5 or 6 or 7. So that I was literally walking around with an open wound of anger. And the anger had to do with I hadn't been loved enough as a kid. And you can imagine when you're 16, 17, 18, you still need the love of your parents, and I wasn't getting it. And so, unfortunately, I wasn't as aware, I had this brittle, this edge that was anger. Why am I not lovable? Why is my gayness, that special part inside of me, not lovable? And so, when I got with Fred Rogers, he began to talk with me and spend time with me, and he helped me to understand I could be healed with unconditional love. And then I spent a lot of time with him reading and studying the Bible, things like that. Had nothing to do with whether or not you were gay or straight or in between or shifting or up or down or whatever. It didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with a whole different soul search, a different kind of presence. It's spiritual, much more than it is physical. So those laws of Leviticus, what do? They throw them in the lake. They don't observe that crap anymore. Times have changed. So he talks about unconditional love and unconditional trust. I learned to trust that he was going to keep his word. And then after he died, I meditated a lot. I feel as though his spirit is with me, and he helped me to write my book. But he and my father and the spirit of my stepfather, my grandfather, my grandmother, all of them, there's a sense of family that I possess now. And that spirit of family helps me to understand that my purpose is to give unconditional forgiveness to white people. Somebody has got to stand up and say, I'll bear the stain. I'll bear the regrets for the brutality. Everywhere white men have gone, they've destroyed and pillaged and brutalized and absconded, you know what I mean, with the culture. They've taken it. Where is it that they have gone that is better? You got it. Someone has got to say, stop. You don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to have war and guns and shooting, whether it's with a bow and arrow or if it's with a pistol or MR-73, whatever they call those rifles. We don't need them. There is, you didn't ask for this, but you're getting it. There is a femininity in the world, I believe very deeply. And that femininity has to do with the transitional, the change, the evolving of humankind. And the role and the wisdom of women, of Mother Earth, is asserting herself now. And one of the first things she's doing is cleaning house. Oh yes, the good earth, Mother Earth, she has a broom and she wields it. And a lot of dumb people are getting the F on out of here. That's what it's about. This is real, people. And we either are going to evolve and go on ahead, understand that we are one, that there's only love, all of humankind, or you're going to be swept away. It's not me. I'm just telling you what I see, what I feel when I pray. There is an energy that's cleaning up, not just this country, the world. Hell, amen. Can I get a witness? Amen. Oh, yeah. Whether you like it or not, that's what's going on. Next.
First, I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. Keep the mic up close, honey.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I want to thank Dr. Lake and Dr. Moss for having this happen. Thank you. I think everybody in this room can agree. My first question is, we all know the episode with Mr. Rogers where you had the kiddie pool and you both put your feet inside, and I was wondering what the response was from other people around you and how people reacted to that episode.
That's the most singularly most powerful thing I think I did on the program. Everybody talked about it. They talked about it because in spite of the fact that it was a nice a family of people in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, we still had this separation of racism where white men could do one thing and black women had to do something else. Black boys like me had to behave a certain way, et cetera, on. So when they had the situations in the urban centers where they were putting chemicals and powder and water in the swimming pools that was hurting the skin and whatever have you of our youth, I was outraged. I couldn't imagine that Fred was going to tolerate this, and I expected him to do something overtly, to put together somebody to object or to go on a march or something, go on television, write this, this big thing about how horrible it is what you're doing. And instead he said, here's the script, Francois. And I looked at that script and I thought, well, what? There's nothing here. I did. I thought, well, come on, Fred, not really. And so when I got to the studio and we rehearsed, I began to wake up. By the way, there was something about this man. Have I shared that part with you? So that when you're around him, you think twice. You think 3 times. Hey. He didn't take any nonsense. He wasn't rude or nasty. He would just turn and walk away. Fred was wonderful to be around. And I often think, well, what did I do? I know, but it took 40 years, 50 years trying to get that answer. So we sat down. He invited me, and I sat down, and then I took my shoes off. And when I put them in the water, once again, it was like something extraordinary, like Kirk going in the rocket and coming back. It was a celestial energy of the union, the unity of humankind. I wasn't the same man who put my feet in the water as who got out of the water. Something had transpired. I don't have words for the upliftment, for the inspiration. I even feel it now as I'm speaking with you. Something was different. And the people around me began to notice it and make a little commentary. Everywhere I go, Detroit, Chicago, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, all across the country, they say, did you know what the meaning was when you sat down with Mr. Rogers and put your feet in the water? Did you have any idea? And I have to tell you very frankly, every single person who's ever asked me that is white. I think that's significant also. And so what I say to them is, do you understand the significance of what happened and what it meant for me to put my feet in the water with that white man? Do you understand the message of unity, of our belonging together that he was expressing? The other thing just came to me the other day. It was the father loving a son. Hello. A whole lot of white people judge only on race. Everything is race, and it's negative. That's the other part. I don't mind somebody seeing my color. In fact, sometimes I stand and look in the mirror and say, damn, you are one good-looking old guy. You've hung in there. Oh, yeah, all right. I declare for God I do. It's been a long time, but I love this beautiful skin. And people all my life have told me I was cute. Oh, you're just so cute, or you think you're so cute. Well, Fred Rogers made me feel good about this humanity that I have been blessed with. So people all around the country ask me, and I tried to tell them in 100 words or less. I've never been successful. But people have written articles comparing this to Jesus in the New Testament and Peter when Jesus went into the upper room with his disciples and he washed their feet. I've had people come from the Catholic magazine, Presbyterian, Episcopal, Congregational, Lutheran, every single one of them come to my house because I don't necessarily go out to do interviews anymore. If they want to come to my house, sit down, I'll talk to you. And everybody who came published the articles except one organization, the Catholics. They said, I'm sorry, we can't print that. I said, Fred loved a gay man. You can't print that? Then don't. Get out of my house because you are talking to a gay man whom Mr. Rogers loved. So that's what I think happened at that time. And it's like a wave that just goes on and on and on, and it comes back again and again. And we go through periods when I'm being interviewed by People magazine or by the New York Times and the Post. All of them have called to do interviews on what does it mean to have your feet in the water with a white man like that back then. And I think it's important for them to think about that. Yeah, think about that. How profoundly racist and oppressive this country could be, that I couldn't just sit down and put my feet in the water with my daddy. That's none of that business. I don't suffer fools, but at the same time I know I've been called to live a certain kind of life, and that it involves sometimes deep embarrassment on my part, and I have to be above the fray. I must rise above their ignorance and their discrimination and what they're saying to me to my face. The good thing is they're saying it to my face, and I can tell them what I think. Yes?
Hello.
Keep the phone, keep it close to your mouth so I can hear you.
Wait, can you hear me?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, we're good now. Okay, hi. Looking back on your musical career, what has been your favorite, musical moment? It could be, a lesson you've taught, or a song you sang, or even, a recording you've listened to. That's it.
I have to say, winning a Grammy was pretty exciting. It was. Thank you. I'm telling you, I was not ready for that because they hadn't announced it definitely who was going to get it. And the people who were behind the scenes in charge said, you be sure to come here and you stand here and do there. And I had a list of who to thank, that kind of stuff. But I remember I was dizzy for weeks after that. And but the thing I think is important to share with people, if you ask me, what was the most outstanding? Did we lose that? Did I do something? Yo, my brother, hello, are we still there? Okay, all right, I'm back. What I try to share with people is how much I love singing this tradition that belongs to black people, and then thereby sharing it with the whole world. I don't care where I am. This is the best place in the world to be, right here. I don't need New York and Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center and Washington, D.C. and the Kennedy Center. I don't need it. It's nice to be invited and get a nice check afterwards. No, it really is. It means you're making a living. And I've had that. I have had it in my career. The only place I haven't sung is in the Metropolitan Opera. And there are lots of reasons for that you don't need to know. But other than that, the best thing in the world is to be somewhere among friends in a setting like this and singing American Negro spirituals. If I'm in Vienna, in Berlin, in Korea, in India, I sang in hotels, beautiful hotels, and carrying on. I just love singing. And they say, oh, would you sing another song, child? Yes. I have another one. Anyway, and they're very appreciative. There are so many. When I was about 20 or 21, I went to Oberlin College for my bachelor's. We went to Russia. And when I got over to Russia and we started, better mind, my brother, how you walk on the cross, way in the middle of the air. Your foot may slip and your soul get lost, way in the middle of the air. Ezekiel saw the wheel, way up in the middle of the air. Ezekiel saw the wheel, way in the middle of the air. Child, those Russians went crazy. They said they don't have anything in their canon, in their literature, like that. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel, Lord, like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel, Lord, like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. The Russians loved it. And they just went, they come down, they're not like y'all, they come down to the front of the stage and they stand there and they have microphones. They have a license to record everything you're doing. So if they really like you, I had to get used to that. And I talked with my agent over there and they said, oh no, that's a custom. They're allowed to record great artists. And there were other ways you can be compensated. Number one is I got paid more for jobs in Berlin, Vienna, places I named, than some of these American places. I'm not calling any names in New York or anything like that. But it's very, very good money. Europe was where I understood that I had something extraordinary, something special, not only the song repertoire, but that I had a distinctive way of singing it that made people want more. I said, oh my Lord, I heard that song all my life, and I never quite heard it like that. And so I feel that that's also a part of my calling, to sing and to give it to people as an authentic a manner as possible. You know, most of the slaves sang spirituals a cappella. Not all the time, but a cappella. They used to send the women off to finishing schools on the plantations. And when the woman came back, she usually could play the pianoforte, this little instrument like a piano. And sometimes Daddy was rich enough, he'll get them a grand piano down there. And she could play, and she let the slaves have access as they were cleaning the house and dusting and oiling furniture, what have you. And some of them could play by ear. They picked it up. And so they began to permit the slaves to entertain on the violin, the viol, the fiddle, whatever you want to call it. And the instruments that they made to bang on, to keep rhythms, gourds that made a special kind of rhythmic sound, and sing. Well, it turned into a major form of entertainment. And part of that was the American Negro spirituals. I'm sure you already know about the Fisk Jubilee Singers who went to Europe in the 1870s. And they sang spirituals. And everywhere they would go, they at first thought they should sing Mendelssohn and Brahms and Bach and Beethoven. That was fine, but they didn't have a distinctive way of doing it. So when they discovered their unique contribution of spirituals to the world, you see, this music nobody paid any attention to it because the slaves were singing it. They were considered ditties. And that's the word when you read some of the literature. It's very demeaning what they thought. And then all of a sudden people are saying, well, that sounds wonderful to me. I like it. The Americans were influenced by the Europeans. And I also was telling Niels that Finland and Norway and Sweden and Denmark were tremendous places where every black artist wanted to go and tour because they were so appreciative of this art form. You could do a whole program of nothing but American Negro spirituals, and it's attested to by the many, many artists that I can think of who went to Scandinavia and went on tours singing authentic American Negro spirituals. That was that nice little girl over there asked that question. Does that answer your question? What? You're welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I was wondering, what inspired you to write your memoir and what made you decide to publish it now, because it was so recent?
Well, you know, the main thing was for the young black boys could understand that it's okay to be gay. That was like the main thing. I said, somebody needs to know that it's okay, that there were no heroes. Who do you know? You know, you read through all the literature. They were there, but many times they spoke in double entendre, double meanings. So you have Shakespeare wrote supposedly the last 20-something sonnets were love songs to a male lover. And I didn't find that out until I did some of my own research. But the whole Harlem Renaissance in New York, in Harlem, Langston Hughes, Arna Bonton, Claude McKay, and on to James Baldwin, what have you. They were all gay, every blankety one of them. But they couldn't write about it. There were many reasons they couldn't write about it. In the Harlem Renaissance, as I was saying to you earlier, black artists painted, sculptured, danced to please white audiences, to please white people. So they told them what they wanted to hear and what they would pay for. And if you put in there that you had this wonderful relationship with your lover and the two of you were living together and you looked for the day you were going to get married, that book was not going to get published. As a matter of fact, when the manuscript was being read, they threw it in the garbage, no matter how exquisite the language was. So none of the Harlem Renaissance writers, just one example, wrote about the real relationships that they had and the love that they had in their lives. So when I was growing up, I was looking around. The only one was James Baldwin. He finally wrote Giovanni's Room. And I read Giovanni's Room and I said, oh, this is sin. This is terrible. You can't write like this. You can't do this. I was condemning myself. I was so full of the church that I couldn't accept this wonderful book. Now, it's legendary as one of the first openly gay novels about between two men. And there are other stories. I also did a lot of reading of a woman named Mary Renault, who wrote Alexander the Great. He was gay. And also The King Must Die, the last, what is that? The Persian Boy. There's a whole literary legend, repertoire, where people were writing about same-sex relationships. In the 20s, you had Gertrude Stein and, what was his name? He wrote Four Saints in Three Acts. Who's the musicologist here? Who wrote Four Saints in Three Acts, Crane? Virgil Thompson. Yes. Who said that? Well, Virgil Thompson and not Carlisle Floyd, no, Aaron Copland were our senior gay writers. Samuel Barber, John Claude Menotti, Benjamin Britten, Peter Pears. I was shocked. Gerard Souzet, Dalton Baldwin. I know them all, honey. Because behind the scenes, musically, they talked to one another. We talked to one another about the difficulty of being gay in this world, in America, in the music profession. There were ways in the music profession that you could do it. So I wrote my book, and I mention those things, and I talk about it. Because the first thing I want people to know is no matter what you accomplish in this world, you're going to have to work hard. You should work hard. But it doesn't mean that you can't have a life, your own choice, your own who you are. And I refuse to go back into the closet. It was too late for that before I wrote the book, but still. I'm sorry. Yeah, man.
You can probably hear me anyway, but what's left in your life that you haven't done yet that you really want to?
I know exactly what it is. I've never made a solo album. And I find it a great dichotomy of life. Now, everybody knows my voice. 1 million people in the world have heard me sing. And that scene that I did with Fred with our feet in the water when I sing, there are many ways to say I love you. Everywhere I go, I sing that, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. But I've never been asked to do a solo album. And I would like to before I die. I was sort of working on one, but you need funds to produce. And I think I might need an orchestra, if not an orchestra, a director with some, guidance and musical insight. There are some people that I know, like Joseph Joubert. Do you know Joseph Joubert down in New York? Linda Twine, and there's some others who are wonderful arrangers and all that sort of thing. So I've never done a solo album, and I asked Mr. Rogers several times, but people only wanted Mr. Rogers in those days. They were not, in fact, Johnny Costa, the great pianist, finally did a solo album himself. And I know that Handyman Negri finally did an album also. Okay, thank you.
Hello. Is it working? I can't tell if it's working. Okay, hi.
Hello.
I have been thinking about you mentioned a lot. You mentioned how you have been through a lot of violence and trauma, and I think about how there's still a lot of hate and violence in the world, and something that I've been thinking a lot about recently is kind of looking for an anchor, right? Which is what I like to think of as like, how do I put it into words? Okay, so I guess the question is, what is your anchor in terms of believing that humanity will get better and that the world will become a better place? And what do you hold on to, and has that changed over time? So.
Well, yes, it's definitely changed. I have a spiritual belief, a spiritual life that I think is very personal. It's just mine. It's not, you can do whatever you need to do, but you don't have to do what I do. And that is that there is a God and that I was born with a purpose. It helps me not to be sad when I'm alone or lonely. During this pandemic, I was discussing with my buddies coming up here that single people suffered. A lot of them committed suicide because we're not touching one another. Human touch is as close as like breathing and water and food. Intimacy. I have no intimacy. I haven't for maybe 30 years. I have not had a partner. And in the book, I share a story about someone that I was very, very much in love with, but he said he was not gay. He was, if anything, he was bisexual. But he needed the love of a woman as much as he needed my love. And I decided, okay, I have found my heart at a fairly young age. And I never really had a lover since after that. A lot of it had to do with being on the down low all the time. So I didn't want to be out, and he wasn't going to be out. I said I would never expose him. So we saw each other on the down low. He would come to New York, or I would go to where he was, or if I was singing in Italy or someplace, he came to be with me there. But if there was one thing like that I wish our society had been different so that I could have had a touching, nourishing relationship that this pandemic, for example, has made even worse, because you're touching people sometimes who are ill. You don't know it. So it's, but we as a society, as a species, I think we are changing. And for example, I've often said, Fred Rogers never had to really deal with trans people or people who were queer in the sense of non-binary. They go back and forth when they feel like it. Well, they were not writing to him, but they are writing to me. I just, dropped a load in a mailbox in responding to people who write about the situation of being gay in this world still. And I know that things are better now because we can discuss it. Look at great old Crane School, and we're discussing homosexuality. Well, we didn't do that at Oberlin or any of the other places. And even though there were people on the faculty who were gay, they were in the closet. And I really feel that that's a loss. I never dated like 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. I never had a date. That's something that's not healthy. That's not healthy. And so when I write the book, I try to help people understand we have to find ways of finding alternative ways of dealing with one another, of caring for one another, and being intimately a part of one another's lives so that somebody is not sick because they're not being nurtured. We all need it. But as I say, I think the society, the culture, the nature of humankind is changing and it's becoming more feminine. So I think men who touch and hold each other don't have to necessarily be gay to be affectionate. I was playing footsies with someone the other day, and we both had our socks on. We were in a public place. And I thought that was the nicest thing. That he said, well, I can do something. I'm not gay, but I know you. This probably means a lot to you. Well, you know, he was a buddy of mine. He's happily married with a couple of kids and everything. But we need something in life. Think about it. How would you like it, never, going home and not being able to have a spouse or a lover, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever? That's the hardest thing. But that aloneness has given me something also, I have to confess. Because I don't need your permission to do what I'm called to do. I don't need a lover or a wife or husbands or parents or anybody else's permission. I will stand on this rock. Did I sort of give you an answer?
May I jump in and ask a question here real quick?
We have a question up here.
Okay, go for it.
Where are you so that because I can't tell.
I'm over here.
Oh,
in the
okay.
back. Hi. So you talked a lot about how spiritually, bouncing off the last question, to keep hope kind of in this world. Since I know a lot of us are going to be music educators, what are some changes you want to see starting from us being teachers on our students to make a more inclusive environment?
Well, I mentioned empathy. So if you are a white teacher or if you're a black teacher, whether your students are Asian or Latin or whatever, embrace that student and embrace that student's upbringing and background. You can't say all Latin music is inferior. You can't say all rap music is unworthy of being here in the Crane. You have to find, in my opinion, I taught students who were jazz artists, who were rock, pop artists, and those who were what they would consider pure classical. Whatever it is, that they're playing a trumpet, or I played the clarinet when I was young.
Same.
And you have to have a feeling, not only for the music, but for the person. And I know that sounds simplistic, but every student who came into my studio, I said, okay, I'm going to give the very, very best, most that I have to that student. I didn't always agree or like what they liked or what they wanted to do with their lives, but I embraced them. I let them know that I cared for the person. And I often find that at Middlebury's, mostly has been my experience, where faculty are afraid of sexual harassment charges. And I think that they have some grounds to stand on. You have to be careful. Everybody knows I'm a virgin again, so I don't have that problem with the boys or the girls. But it's a serious concern, and so you have to let your student, you can't teach singing on a Zoom session. You know what I'm talking about? So you have, a student needs to be in that maestro's presence. There was a time when a student went to live with, as an apprentice, if he was an artist, if he was a sculptor, if he was a woodworker, if he was a bricklayer, whatever it was, you went and you lived in that atmosphere, because that's what the daily life, and you watch. This is how a farmer behaves. This is how a bricklayer behaves. This is how a painter behaves. And you learn the craft. This is how a baker bakes every day and prepares the flour and the grain or whatever. And then you absorb it, and it becomes secondary in your life. That, to me, is what's missing. And it's not just in the classroom. I contend that if we are going to save this educational system, it's got to be outside of the classroom. What are the students doing? Where? And you have to find your place in that. There's some of my students, I sing duets with them. They can't sing with, very much. Well, it's the truth. They come to Middlebury to be language specialists or engineer or sociologists or economics. They don't come to sing. So a long time ago, I gave up on the idea of having like Crane singers. And I take whosoever will, let him come, and then we sing little duets and trios. And I say, hello, how are you today? They say, I'm fine, maestro. Dear, what did you have for lunch? We sing back and forth. It sounds so silly, but I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital. I was in the I was in the hospital, and my students came into that hospital room singing to me. And the nurses said, "All your students sing to you. How come?" And I explained to them. And the whole wing, when I was up in Burlington, the whole wing of the hospital heard us singing and said, "Please do more. Would you please sing? Can you mind singing some more songs?" So I was like this. I sat in the chair in the door, and I just sang down the hall. Not a single person in that hospital said, "Shut up, too much noise." It's healing. It's not just the noise of the song, it's the vibration. There's a vibration that when you relax and let yourself be a part of it, it opens your chakras. Oh dear, am I talking about stuff that, you know? And it's learning. It's what you learn. It's more than just what's on a page in a book or even just what I'm saying. It's being in that environment. So I invite students to my house. We cook together. We go shopping together. We wash our clothes. Everybody was coming over to my house to wash their clothes. And I decided that was a teachable time. So while their clothes were being washed, I was teaching. And I would talk to them about certain experiences or certain things that I might know about them or some things that are happening in the news that they were not up to date on what was going on. And what I said to my students is, you have to pay attention to the politics because it affects each and every one of us. How you get your budgets together that they give to schools like the State University of New York. You have to know who those politicians are that you've elected to office, that they understand we need music schools. We need hello. So we have to know who the politicians are and what their stance is. They say, what would Fred Rogers do now if he were alive and all? The first thing was, when they started asking me this question, was getting those children out of those cages down on the Mexican border. We're not going to stand for that. I don't care what they've done, where they come from. Children have always have a place. Otherwise, the universe comes to an end. You have to have the children, and you cannot abuse them at all. The second thing is I'm concerned now about the women in Afghanistan. We have got a debacle. I'm not saying we should have stayed over there for another 10 years or 20 years or whatever, but I am saying women need to be. We have a law before Congress they're trying to pass, which has to do with daycare. What is wrong with daycare? Who doesn't understand daycare? You have to have a way of taking care of the babies. It's that simple. And women have a right to work if they want to, if they need to. I think, for example, my mother was not the kind of woman who should have had children. She was not a stay-home mother. And so there are women who would rather go and be who are being forced. I also know at Middlebury they have some house husbands. I got to know a couple of them, and it was fantastic. Just talking with these guys. They were walking with their babies, and I was walking with my dog. So we would talk about life, daycare, all those kinds of things that impinge on every single one of us. And one day, you're going to be sitting in the driver's seat. I'm sorry if this is a little bit repetitious, but I tell my students that all the time. Know what's going on. Don't come around me dumb. Don't. No, I won't have it in my atmosphere. So you have to look at the news. Get off of TikTok, because there's not a damn thing happening on TikTok. It's not. I tell them, get off. Turn that stuff off. Pay attention to what's going on, because it's going to affect you. And I'll tell you something very honestly. Even if it doesn't affect you, you should be concerned that it affects me. You are my brother. You are my sister. When I'm in pain as a part of the universe, you are too. And I tell you what I've learned. You may be smiling and walking around here now talking about ha ha ha. Look at next week it'll be your turn. I've seen it happen. I'm not going to go into who and who, but I've seen it. Don't make fun of people or put them down because they're a little dumb. Your turn may come. So you see, yes, young man. You're waving at me? Yes, yes. Dr. King sure said that, and it's proven to be true. You never know when you're going to be next. Oh, what a horrible thing. Anyway, there's the law of the universe. It's called the cause and effect. You put out there, it's coming back. You're not always so sure how it's going to come back. You cannot choose, but you'll be sitting there saying, oops, I know what I said to that girl. Oops, I know how bad I treated him. Here it is. Now somebody, I'll never forget the first time I was in love with someone, or I was in silly love, not really deep love, but he rejected me. And I sat there, I was miserable. But I also remembered when I did it to someone else. I said, oh no, forget it. You know, I was impatient. I was young in New York City, and I was dashing around and acting. I thought, oh, they'll be silly. It came right back to me, and when it did, I knew it. That's just me. Anybody else want to earn $100? Well, thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you.